everybody, and welcome to another spoiler review here for episode 2 of Moon Knight from the
Geek
Buddies!
We're back at it for another week here of doing some fun content reviewing Moon Knight, the new Disney Plus show that is out now, starring Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke, Mike Calamawy, and the voice of Emperor Abraham. A number of fantastic actors as well involved in this cast, and we're going to break it all down for you. But first, let's introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Roca, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies. Mike?
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
Shannon? Ooh.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor, where you may have seen me on Silicon Valley, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and The Goldbergs.
Okay. And joining us again this week, as he will be joining us for the next 6 weeks to review this series here, is the great Mike Kalinowski. Kalinowski, how are you?
Gentlemen, how are we? That's how I am.
Oh, better
That's
now.
how I am right now.
I love it. I
I
love
love
it.
in the house and all's well here.
Yeah. How is the new puppy?
He's
What's
great.
the
I
name?
don't know. He's all over the place. He's good.
What's his name?
He's good. Samson.
Samson. Oh, that's a good
Samson.
name. That's a
Yep.
good name. Be careful about cutting the
Yeah.
hair on that one.
Here,
Respect.
He'll say hello.
Oh, okay.
There he is.
Oh, look
there he
at
is.
that.
Oh
my God.
Yeah. Okay. Go back with Mama.
Is he going to get bigger, or is that?
We think probably a little bigger. Probably like
Okay.
Cadence's size, maybe mid-20s pounds.
Hey, as long as it's not a jackal, I think we're good. So there we go. We're going to get everything here going on in the world of Moon Knight. But first, just want to give a shout out to our sponsor here, Carbon Health. They power and sponsor the Geek Buddies here and the Outlaw Nation, all the stuff we do here on the Geek Buddies. And they're such a great place. Go there, carbonhealth.com. You want to get checked out. You want to get seen. They got 100 plus clinics now over 14 states, 50 plus clinics all over California, Los Angeles, Sacramento, and other places as well. They believe in healthcare being a personal experience. You and a clinician, they're setting up a plan for you. And they've also got an app called a Doc in Your Pocket that you can put in there and reference whenever you need to have any healthcare needs taken care of. And I think they do some mental health care for sure. And certainly that's something that could come into play here as we keep going down the road with Moon Knight for sure. But let's jump into it. Episode 2 here from Disney Plus. Excited to talk about it all. I'll go to you, Vogel, first. Overall thoughts on this second episode coming out of the first episode, getting more with Stephen Grant in that first episode, getting introduced to Stephen Grant. Now we've got Marc Spector taking a little bit more of a dual role here, a little bit more of a buddy duo, buddy cop, no, not cop duo, but buddy duo approach here to Moon Knight. What did you think of this second episode?
Yeah, I was super into it. I mean, I think we talked about last week, the first episode kind of just threw us in and didn't give us a lot of answers. Just kind of, we were on the journey with Steven, so we didn't really know what the hell was going on.
Right.
And I think this episode did a really great job of giving us all the answers in an entertaining way. Sometimes when you get to those exposition dumps, they can get a little boring, or they can like drag down the action or slow things down. But I think having your exposition dump basically come from your bad guy solved that problem a lot, because it kept the tension up. So even though we were getting a lot of information about what's going on, and we now are on our way to Egypt with a much better understanding of Mark's deal, Steven's deal, Khonshu's deal, Harrow's deal, everybody's deal. I feel like we had a lot of fun getting there. I thought it was great. I loved seeing some more Moon Knight action. I loved seeing more of the Jackal. I think that there was a lot of really fun stuff. I still think if you are like coming to this series like with just major action in mind, maybe you're not getting enough. I don't know. Yeah. But for me, the just watching Oscar Isaac do his thing, and Oscar Isaac as Steven versus Oscar Isaac as Marc, the interplay between the two of them, like that's the stuff that I really come here for. I feel like we got that in spades, particularly near the end of the episode. So I'm still very, very much on board.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to start becoming more of a prevalent thing as we go forward. They wanted to establish Stephen Grant first, and then Marc Spector through Stephen Grant's eyes, and now we're getting the back and forth. Certainly by the end of the episode, as you mentioned, Michael, the fact that Stephen Grant now is understanding when he goes under, he's aware now where he is, as opposed to what we got in the first episode, where he just kind of disappears for days and doesn't know what happened. Now he's aware of what is going on for sure. He's awoken. Shannon, thoughts on this second episode? Did you like this one? Did it change your mind around a little bit? Or is this still one that you're kind of slowly not warming up to?
No, I am warming up to this one.
Okay.
I mean, I still think directorially, it didn't check off all the boxes for me, and I did like the action that we got. I have some questions, but I thought the script by Michael Castelline was really funny. Like, it was a really funny script, and all within the confines of the characters. It never felt like anything was being too hammed up. It all felt very true to the characters as they've been portrayed. And also, there's a lot of heart in this, and I feel like the directors for me are kind of dropping the ball. Like, I feel like there are those moments where you could have squeezed out a little bit more emotion. But overall, I thought this was a big improvement over episode 1. I wish they'd been together, personally.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. If they'd released together is what you're saying. So yeah, I could understand that. Kalinowski, thoughts on this?
Yeah.
You were also kind of lukewarm on the Moon Knight last week. How do you feel coming out of the second episode? Were some of your concerns addressed? Some of your worries about the show, or do you still feel you're kind of not 100% there with it?
Well, the first episode I had said, this is not the show I was expecting, so I've got to change my expectations. And now, if this is the show that we're going to get, I'm not going to like it.
Oh wow!
This episode did nothing for me.
Wow.
I joke with McClung, and again, we've got 100 minutes of show so far.
Right.
And I threw out Jeff Goldblum. Was like, are we going to do some Moon Knight in this Moon Knight television series? 2 minutes of Moon Knight in 100 minutes of show. Yeah. But my big problem is I don't care about Steven. Why do I care about him? I don't like him. I don't know why. There's no impetus for his character to me. I'm like, why do I care about this man and why he's going through this? When I see him, I'm kind of reminded of Peter Griffin's Family Guy's Hugh Grant bit. I'm terribly befuddled. It's like, and again, maybe this might be Marc Spector's version of an Englishman. So when we do meet Mark more, it's like it's this comedic, over the top, Mr. Beanish English person. I just don't care about him. And if that's your central character for 100 minutes and I'm not on the journey with him, I don't see why I need to care about him. Like McClung and I again, we're talking about like Darrow's, what's his goal? It's like he wants to release the god to cleanse the earth. It seems kind of generic to me. Again, I after last episode, I was like, I wanted to temper my expectations. And now I get this episode. I'm like, oh, this is what it's going to be. It's not going to be the show. But on the other hand, to give something good, like I don't like the character of Mr. Knight and what they did with it, making it Steven's version of what a superhero is. Like it's like I need the suit. That was brilliant. So there's something I did like. So again, I'm going to go along for the ride. I'm not going to not watch it. But we'll see.
I was surprised by that too, Mike. They made that decision that they were going to introduce Mr. Knight in this way, but it works because you spent so much time with Stephen Grant that when he becomes Mr. Knight, you're like, oh, this makes so much sense that he would have a more, a psycho Colonel Sanders look to him.
That was brilliant.
Than he would the overall cloak and all the pomp and circumstance of all that, because he wouldn't think to go that far with a look. So Stephen's more of an aspire because he's more of a button down guy anyway. So that makes all the sense in the world. But I hear you. I mean, I think this is a valid point you bring up in that if Stephen Grant doesn't work for you, this is going to be a tough show for you to watch, a tough show for you to get through, because they purposely turn an Oscar, and this is a role I've never seen Oscar Isaac play. They've turned, because Oscar can be quite ruthless, can be quite unsettling,
very much
quite
so
powerful, turning him into this kind of low status character in terms of his nebbishness and in terms of his being overwhelmed by everything. I'm thinking of him screaming as Khonshu is chasing him out of the storage unit. This is a character that they purposely wanted him to be in some way vulnerable, and you want to take care of him. But if it isn't working for you, it's going to be tough to see the changes there. But let's jump into it and go back to you, Vogel, on this. And for anybody who's watching here, this is a spoiler review, so we are going to start spoiling the episode. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Come on back and hang out with us. Let's start there. There's three main storylines running through this, or three main relationships running through this episode here. And certainly, let's start with Steven and Marc. I mean, Kalinowski bringing up interesting points. Shannon bringing up interesting points. Vogel, this idea that we're seeing Marc Spector take a little bit more of the wheel here in the running of these two guys and what or this person rather, and what they're going through and what they're dealing with. And we see Steven kind of trying to figure this all out. The divorce with Layla, he's like, I would never divorce you. She comes into the mix, and we'll get to that relationship in just a second, but them kind of having their conversation. And then we find out Marc's been trying to protect Layla from Khonshu, him, and revealing in the storage unit or whatever the content, they're an avatar for Khonshu. They're meeting out this justice, and we see at the end how Khonshu kind of works on Marc and tells him, you were supposed to do this, you were supposed to do that, you didn't do this, now you won't like the next avatar again if you don't accomplish this stuff. And so do you like the back and forth we're getting as Steven is trying to, like, Marc, you did terrible things. I don't want you to be controlled anymore. I don't want you to kill people. It's this battle of good versus evil inside this body. Did you like the way they presented this? And what's your thoughts now on Spector and Stephen Grant?
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with Kalinowski insofar as if you don't like Steven Grant, this is certainly not going to be the show for you. I like him, but I also have literally no preconceived notions of what I feel like Moon Knight is supposed to be. So you show me this sort of meek, sort of down on his luck British guy who's very confused about what's going on, and I'm kind of on board with him. I'm like, all right, I'm on this journey with you. You're trying to put these pieces together. But then as he got to the storage unit, as he started having bigger conversations where Marc was like, you need to put this away, you need to get out of here, and Steven kind of standing up to Marc and being like, no, like, there was a push and pull to their dynamic that I found really, really interesting, that kind of carried through as Steven went to Harrow, and Harrow kind of having all of the information, a full understanding of what's going on, and talking to Steven and talking to Marc about Khonshu, I thought was really, really interesting. And yeah, as you said, like, kind of Steven making these assumptions that Marc is just a bad guy. Right. And Marc sort of being really dismissive of Steven. But then Steven kind of stepping up, like, you really see where this is going. And I particularly loved the scene at the end where Marc was in control and Steven was finally the one in the mirror. And not only, did Steven have to, like, sort of get used to being in the back seat in that way, but Steven really drove Marc to the point where, Marc kicking that glass, like, I think we sort of thought, well, Steven's the crazy one and Marc is super in control, but you see Marc lose it there at the end and sort of stomp on the glass and shatter it. And what I really think they're doing, and again, I do not think that this is going to be the show for Kalinowski, is that whether or not Steven was a made-up personality, was a cover, was any of these things, this is clearly a show where Steven is going to step up into his own right as a part of this Moon Knight personality
trio,
and you can even a trio or more, however many, and even you can even see that in the relationship with Layla, where he has more in common with Layla as far as the poet that they love and everything else. That he might be the better relationship for Layla than Marc is. So I think that they're definitely centering things around Steven, which is going to be really interesting to me. But yeah, so I'm really, really digging that dynamic.
Yeah, Shen, I mean, it's curious, isn't it? I mean, because did Marc create Steven in order to hide himself from something, or to kind of keep people off his tracks? Like, we don't know why he created Steven. Even Layla calls him out and goes, I don't know what this accent is. I don't know what this character is that you're doing. Like, what? I don't believe this stuff. Like, what are you doing here? And we find out that Marc is trying to protect her in some way, but why create this character? And now this character has agency in his body and is equal now by the end of the episode in being able to control him. And it seems like they're setting up that they're both going to have skills that that body will need as it goes forward. And Khonshu tells us, I found you as a corpse, like you were essentially a corpse. So what do you think about how this relationship is playing out? And the comedic moments, as you referenced earlier, how did you like the comedic moments between Steven and Marc as this was going on as well?
I mean, he had some great one-liners. I eat one piece of steak and suddenly I go bonkers. I mean, really, really funny. In terms, again, not knowing a ton about comics, Moon Knight, it seems like, I mean, there's so many things that line up with Marc that Layla talks about with Marc that line up with Steven. That, like, oh, are you talking to your mom again? And the fact that, we have this sort of relationship that's established with Steven and his mom that's more than likely Marc. It's really interesting because new identities, cover identities, is something that's clearly not new for Marc. I mean, Layla's clearly very acquainted with this, and it almost is a cover identity that has grown into a personality of its own. It's really interesting, and like as much as I did not like F. Murray Abraham in the first episode, this one I feel like there was somebody different in that booth directing him, because there was a menace to Khonshu this time. I mean, it was just such a more interesting character to me. To like in the first one, it sounded like his character from the Apple TV show that he's in. I can't remember the name of it. The video game company show. Really great show, but he just sounded a little too put upon and lighthearted in the first episode, whereas this one you sense some actual stakes in his voice. And I feel like the design of Khonshu is so cool. One thing, and again, I'll put this more on the directors than I would on Oscar Isaac's performance. You think about the way Christopher Reeve in the original Superman 1 and Superman 2 was able to differentiate between Clark Kent and Superman. With no special effects. It was just his body. And I feel like Oscar Isaac has not been given that chance yet. I feel like the only difference between the two characters is one has an American accent and one has a British accent. When it comes to like the physicality, like it's the same body, it's the same motion. I feel like Marc Spector needs to be more broad-chested. Stephen Grant needs to be a little more sunken in. I feel like there is a way physically to do that Oscar Isaac is not getting that chance. I mean, the moment when he's looking at the closed caption footage with JP, who another funny performance from Alexander Cole. Anytime a Brit calls someone else a donut, I think that is so funny. But when Marc looks up into the camera and he's like, "Oh, it's you, mate," and he's just like, "No, that's not me," and it's just like, we need to see, like, we know it's not him, but I feel like as an audience we need to see it more, and we're just not seeing it yet. When Marc destroys that mirror, that's when I feel like we see it for the first. Like, okay, that is a different guy.
Right. Interesting. Kalinowski, you and I are both big Moon Knight fans. Marc Spector is, as you said, kind of the James Bond of the Marvel comics. Seeing him play, even seeing the way he's portrayed here, where he's unsettled, he's unsure, he's trying to stop Steve. He can't control his own body. He can't force Steven out of his own body and to take control. And then Khonshu is essentially browbeating him, making him insecure, making him scared. This is not the Marc Spector I imagine that you wanted to see, and then you counter with a Stephen Grant that you're not a fan of. Is this tough for you to watch on both levels because of how they're doling out Spector and how they're doling out to Stephen Grant?
I think this is something that towards our final episode of this we'll be able to kind of get a better grasp of. Like, I'm curious why and there could be the character of Jake Lockley, which is his third personality. Right. Why that's not there, and why they went with Steven, because Marc in all the iterations is the driving force. Right. So why they decided to go with this. And again, the next two episodes could be all Marc, and then the final two could be all Jake, and it all ties together. Marvel has definitely earned the goodwill. They know what they're doing with this character. Or maybe they were on the side where they said, you know what, not many people know this character as opposed to our others. Let's go. You got a different take, do it. And again, people have pointed out, like, for now, since the 70s, there's been no definitive run of Moon Knight. Yeah, that people have said this is the run that we've got, that people know we've got to do. So there's more latitude in what they're doing. I'm very curious to see how it plays out. To McClung's point, there needs to be more of a switch for what we're seeing with him, like a physicality switch. But again, so many questions. But again, I think maybe I'm just not connecting with Stephen Grant. Yeah. So maybe that's why, as opposed, I'm not as invested in his journey of what he's going through. I don't care that he's in pain or he's in trouble. I just don't. For some reason, it's not connecting with me, and then that's just me. That's not that he's not giving a great performance. I think it looks beautiful. I think if they shot in Atlanta, which I'm sure they probably did, most of it doesn't look it. It looks very, very much like they shot in England.
I think they did shoot it in England.
Okay, and I'm curious to see what they're gonna do with Egypt now, how they're gonna pull this off. But production value, everything like that. The casting is great. It's just the motivation with the characters and what they're doing with them is not working with me right now.
Okay, fair enough.
There's a lot of people that were saying, because I'm just curious as to what you two think of it as someone who knows it more, because I don't really know, but I did notice, like, I think in the first episode when that girl in the museum came up and said, hey, you asked me out, we're going to steak, or the fish disappearing, like, with the information we had, we're like, oh, that wasn't Steven, so it was clearly Marc. But a lot of people online are saying, no, like, we're going to find out that that was Jake, because it doesn't seem like Marc is the guy now that we're getting to know him and he's really just focused on his mission and doing whatever that's gonna go replace a fish or ask a girl out to dinner. So there's a lot of people that are saying there's hints there that we're seeing that there is another personality that's been popping out that we'll reveal later, which I'm really interested by, because I was attributing a lot to Marc that by the end of this episode I kind of was like, I don't know that this is the guy that would have done those things.
Yeah. If you take Moon Knight out of it, he's always had 3 personalities. No matter what version of the character it's been, there's always been 3 and Moon Knight. Yeah. So I don't see them skipping this over, just saying, we're going to go with 2 because 3 is too confusing. Right. Yeah.
So question for Kalinowski and John. In the comics, so you've got the 3 personalities. Is Moon Knight essentially a 4th personality, or is it Marc in costume?
Well, that's the Khonshu. Well, yes, not necessarily another personality. I don't think it's more just it's just Spector, like
Spector, like. I've been trying to remember if the multiple personalities came a little later. Like, at the beginning, he was very much straightforward, and then they kind of did a retcon early on, from what I remember.
And Khonshu's only recently become like a malevolent force. Like initially, he was just kind of this. You have to do this.
Mid-2000s.
Mid 2000s is when he started to become more active in like the worst.
It was almost like, John, you remember the stuff? There's like they had Khonshu's like a little Jiminy Cricket a lot of the times on his shoulders. Yeah. This giant beak character was always on his shoulder, like a Jiminy Cricket. So that is. I want to say it was Bendis that created that, but I can be completely wrong. I know it was the mid 2000s.
Yeah, that's when he started to become, and that's when I would read the comics and be like, dude, this guy's an a-hole. Like
he's not a good guy.
Yeah, he's not. And so they're certainly like leaning into that aspect. And we certainly saw Khonshu throughout this episode.
Yeah.
We got him kind of, we got to see that Khonshu isn't as strong as we thought, because Harrow tells Marc, or tells Steven, you don't have to do anything he tells you to do. You don't have to, he can just blow the wind and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't affect you. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal to Marc, though, because he's sworn to be an avatar. Steven hasn't. And so we see that there are limits to Khonshu, what he can do. But Khonshu tries to use manipulation on Marc, no different than what we're seeing Harrow try to do on Marc. So it's very interesting. I like the back and forth. I like the 2 different characterizations. I'm curious, and I think, Mike, that's a great thing you bring up here, because that makes sense, because Marc loves Layla. That's why he's divorcing her and trying to keep her out of this, because he doesn't want her to walk down the path he walked. So they both, in essence, do love her in some way. So Jake seems to be the logical choice to be trying to mess around and flirt and set up dates and do all these kinds of things. So he disappearing for different things under different personalities? It's going to be fascinating to see. And there's a lot of shattered mirrors. Eventually,
a lot of shattered mirrors in this show. They broke a lot of glass.
Eventually, there's going to be one shattered mirror where we see all 3 of the personalities. And won't that be something? And Kalinowski might be right. We might see it in the last 2 episodes or in the next few episodes and see what shows up as we go along, for sure. The next relationship, let's get into it. Layla here. Kalinowski, Layla coming in. Certainly, I think Mia Calamawy did a fantastic job with this character. I like her acting. I like her performance here, the connection they have. She's not buying this bullshit from Steven. She's got the divorce papers. They have that moment about the French poet. And if you notice, for spoilers there's Man on Ice book up there, kind of a Captain America reference possibly. And then we see Layla trying to kind of get Marc to come out, to embrace, to summon the suit, to get the stuff going. She's got the scarab. She confronts him about all this kind of stuff. The 2 corrupt cops come in. She sneaks out the window and then eventually shows up there to confront Harrow with the scarab. They run off, have the battle, have the fight, and she's there witnessing everything and what's going on. And then boom, sees him become Mr. Knight, then become Moon Knight. Do you like the way they're setting up this relationship here? Essentially sitting in for is it Marlena? Sitting in for Marlena.
Yeah.
Do you like this way they're constructing her? Because she's not that well constructed in the comics. This kind of version of her. Do you like this construction of it?
I do. I like incredibly strong character. Holds her own with Marc. Like they seem, from the little bits of context we've gotten of their past life, it seems like they're equals. Like they were on the same kind of, like, before Marlena was always such a the classic damsel in distress. You know, Mark's got to save her, this and that, and she's always the damsel somewhere. So this version, yeah, I'm on board. The acting was great, like I said. That was exciting, something different that I'm not used to or expecting. And I was like, oh, I'm on board. I like this. So yeah, absolutely. That's a thumbs up for me on her.
Swinging over to you, Shannon. Do you like the back and forth? Do you like the connection? Do you buy the chemistry here and the burgeoning possible romance between another personality with in the same body with Layla here, and then how Layla is active in helping Steven escape and fight all those people off and do her own skills, even though she's an archaeologist as well or something, whatever. She's got connections with Marc. What do you think about this characterization here from Mia Calamawy?
You know, I thought she was fine. I mean, I don't feel like enough has been given to her to really make an impression yet.
Okay.
Because as of right now, I mean, she's playing another confused person. Come on, Marc.
Yeah.
Snap out of it, Marc. The moment where she rescues Steven, I thought was a lot of fun, and watching her kind of kick some ass. I enjoyed that. But as of right now, like, I feel like we need to see Layla and Marc to really kind of ascertain the chemistry. It's impossible to talk about anyone's performance in the show without swinging back to Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, please.
Because he's just, he's the guy, he's the lead, and he's just so central to every other person in the series. And the thing that Oscar Isaac has done beautifully, and I don't think it's being showcased enough by the directors, is playing this this vulnerability. When he realizes that Marc gave her divorce papers, and you see like just I don't know if it's heartbreak, but it's shock. Like, he just can't believe. Like, I would never do that.
It almost involuntarily blurts out of his mouth that. Yeah. And there was another scene when he's being dismissed. I mean, sorry if we're going to touch on this later, but when he's being dismissed from the museum by HR. Yeah.
When he says, do you have any museum property on you? And he's like, oh, I wouldn't. One, great writing, because like, oh, I wouldn't have nicked it. And that's when he discovers the key in the phone. But it's also his name tag that says Steven. And it's so, and I think this, like, it was played for comedy, which it was funny, but I think you can ratchet up the emotion there, because this is a guy who loves that museum.
Yeah.
And it's being taken away from him because of something that he had nothing to do with. So, those two moments, the HR moment and the moment when he realizes divorce is on the table, like, Oscar Isaac is doing a great job, and I'm anxious to see what else she can do.
Yeah, well, also the symbolism of taking the name tag off means Steven is no longer in control of his body. Now Marc is going to be more in control, so there's a symbolism of that as well, for sure. Mike, what did you think about Layla coming in? Did you like the energy between them, the fighting stuff that goes on here, the scarab situation, her connection with him, her being upset with him, pushing Steven out of the way to look in the bag and see all the passports, see all the stuff. So certainly she's no pushover here, and gets her answers however she needs to get them. And then clearly has no problem walking in to this situation, this cult commune that Harrow has set up in this Skid Row area, and confronting them and trying to save him from the situation.
Yeah, I mean, like, I really liked her a lot. I agree with Shannon that I'm excited to see what more she can do and what more they're going to give her. But for what she was given in this episode, I thought she did a really, really great job. I think that it's always great when a character comes in, like, she came in with her own goals. She didn't just come in and be like, I've missed you so much. Now what can we do together? Like, she came to deliver divorce papers. Yeah. And then when she found out that he had the scarab, which is what they had been looking for, A, she was pissed about it, and B, she was like, well, I got this, like, this is some shit, like, this is the thing, and then showed up to rescue him. So, like, she's a very active character with her own agenda, which in general is great to see with a female character, but also because Steven and Marc are battling with each other to even have dominance in their body, it's nice to have another character that knows what she wants and where she wants to go. There's a lot of questions that come up with her, because she clearly knows who Marc is.
Yeah.
She clearly knows that Marc can go on missions that are dangerous. She knows he has a suit, but even when she was talking about the Moon Knight suit, she was like, I was worried about you, but then I was like, well, he has the suit. But then I was like, well, what if he doesn't have the suit? And I'm like, well, that suit's like magic on his body. So clearly she doesn't have all the information. I don't know that she knows about Khonshu. And I also don't know that she necessarily knows about Marc's personality disorder. I don't know that she does know that he does cover things. Like, I don't know that he's gone undercover with other personalities and that Steven is a personality. Like, I think, as far as I know from this show, she only knows Marc.
Right.
And Steven having the accent and doing everything, she's like, what the fuck are you even doing right now? But then I did think in the scene in his apartment, she played a really nice balance in, I am pissed at Marc for doing this performative thing that he's doing. And yet at the same time, I, as an audience member, am sensing chemistry between her and Steven.
Yeah.
And that's a really neat trick. Like, it's a neat trick to be like, I think you are doing a fake accent right now. I need to deliver you divorce papers. You and I are done.
Right.
I am also attracted to the person that you are pretending to be. like that's a really neat trick for her to play. So I do think I give her a lot of credit for actually making that scene work. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see where she goes next, because we took a pretty big leap at the end of that episode. We know that Khonshu was like, we're going to Egypt because we got to get that scarab. And we know that Marc is there, or we know that Oscar Isaac's body is there. But at the end of that episode, I don't know who it was that was drinking. I'm not quite sure. It wasn't Steven. And I don't know if Layla's there or if she came with them or if she's following them. So like a lot of questions about where she's going to be, but obviously she's a big part of it. And I'm excited to see what she can do in her performance. And I'm also excited to just get more information to sort of understand where we are. You know, I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, but like Andrew Harrow, Arthur. Right. Arthur Harrow. Thank you. Arthur Harrow.
I thought it was Arthur Darrow. I'm all over the place here.
He said the thing in this episode that I was asking you guys about last week.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I wonder if Khonshu took you because you were already broken.
Yeah.
Or took you because he knew he could easily break you.
Yeah.
So I think as we get this information, you know, this is a Moon Knight. We don't know, did Marc Spector have this disorder when Khonshu found him? And there were already other personalities that were in existence? Or did the becoming of Khonshu's avatar lead to these other personalities? Yeah. And did Khonshu know that? And does Khonshu know that because he wants to get into, like, there's a lot of questions about Marc's disorder and Khonshu, and like, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the skull-headed raven egg? You know, like, where does this land on the whole thing?
That's a good point. For sure. And let's move on to the other relationship here with Harrow. Yeah, Harrow, this starts to develop now. Harrow had questions about this Steven Grant Marc Spector split in the first episode. Now he seems to kind of slowly be accepting that this is happening, using different tactics with Steven, having him kidnapped by these two police officers who are clearly part of, or detectives rather, who are clearly part of this cult commune that he's building, bringing in Steven, walking him through everything. And of course, before we get there, we get some exposition about Marc Spector and this find and this dig, people being duct taped and executed. So gives information to kind of Steven to maybe kind of have an issue with Marc, maybe kind of craftily knowing, hey, if he has two different personalities, then let's work on the kind of weaker personality we think is a weaker personality to try to get it to turn on the stronger personality. And then Arthur walks him through this whole commune. They have this conversation. And just when it looks like Steven might get one over, because it's like, I'll give you the scarab. I don't want to. He asks the question. It's almost like in Star Trek V when Kirk goes, what does God need a spaceship for if he's God? Here is him saying to
all the examples you could use in Star Trek V.
What does God need for the starship?
It's the one good scene in the movie.
A Final Frontier reference. Mwah.
But true though. But we get Harrow here. We get Steven's asking her like, would Amit, because Harrow reveals that he wants to bring Amit to Earth. And Amit will judge before you're even, I guess in Minority Report, everybody, judge before you do everything. would you kill a baby? So we have the Hitler baby discussion pop out. So Steven starts to kind of figure out his own agency in this moment beyond being nebbish and nervous. He's actually pushing back a little bit. He's actually finding these moments with Harrow, and then Harrow hitting the cane, purple magic a la Agatha Harkness out of those cracks that Steven was there showing in Spider-Man No Way Home. And we see a Jacko come out. And then I think that's the last we see of Harrow for the rest of the, and then Harrow picks up the scarab and kills, I imagine, a homeless person or a person down on the luck there who grabs it. So what did you think about this relationship with Steven and Harrow? Marc and Harrow don't have a conversation at all, but Steven and Harrow do. And Harrow even says what Khonshu is saying to him and reveals that he was the Avatar before Steven. So a lot here to process, Shannon. What did you think about this and Hawke's performance in this episode?
I mean, Ethan Hawke is doing an incredible tightwire act of being just broad enough, like in the hands of a lesser performer. Any number of 90s nondescript European bad guys would have taken this role and made it so silly. But I mean, just the hair, everything, like you see stills of this, and it's like, this should not work. But the way Ethan Hawke is able to portray this, depending on how the series turns out, I mean, to me at this point, Arthur Harrow could join, he could hop up there on the Rushmore of MCU bad guys with Thanos and Loki. I mean, I know I'm putting a lot on this.
That is strong.
It's an early call, but calling my shot. I'm calling my shot. But Ethan Hawke is doing he's so much fun to watch. And as he's explaining everything to Steven, he's making a lot of sense. The same way Thanos through a particular lens, Thanos made.
Yeah. Well, if you're John Roca, you mean the lens of if you're John Roca?
Hey.
Oh, well, no. I mean, that's why I'm. You guys can't tell, but on my screen, I'm looking right at John because I know he's going to be the most receptive audience to this. Arthur Harrow is making a lot. He's making a lot of good points, and Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac together, they are electric. They are so much fun to watch. And again, I think directorially some mistakes were made here because the moment that the homeless guy picks up the scarab, show me that go close, go tight. Don't show it from a distance like you did with the older woman in the first episode. Like really see that even though Arthur Harrow is making a lot of good points, ultimately this is our villain for a reason. Yeah. Like he's willing to kill this guy because he needs the little scarab. So again, directorially, I'm just not a fan of what all three of the directors have done thus far. But Ethan Hawke's performance, I think, is just dynamite. And the fact that we are 2 episodes in, and this is the fourth scene that our protagonist and our antagonist have had together, I'm really looking forward to see what this final confrontation is. It could be a big CGI battle with Amit, but watching Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke together is a delight.
Yeah, it's curious, Mike. I mean, he killed the homeless guy. What power does he have without using the cane? Because I didn't see him use the cane. Or does having the cane give him that power to kill people randomly when he feels like it? I don't know, but what did you think about how Harrow is? Because remember, this is a minor character in the comics. It's really not a big deal. So they're constructing this from scratch, this cult-like approach to things. Did you like the back and forth with him and Steven? Do you think they're not making? Is it a bit of a toothless villain, or do you think there is more to come here from Harrow and he's patiently taking his time? And what do you think about the reveals that he was Khonshu's avatar before Steven or Marc?
Well, I kind of, I disagree a little bit with Kalinowski because I do think that he's a little bit more interesting than just your typical villain for that reason, for the entire scene that he had with Oscar Isaac. Because if he was Khonshu's avatar at one point, it's kind of that classic superhero debate of, well, you can go stop bad guy after bad guy after bad guy after bad guy, but you're not really solving the problem. There's always going to be more bad guys. And Khonshu seems very clear on, I do things after somebody did something. And so Arthur Harrow did that for a while, clearly felt like that wasn't enough, and went over to Amit and was like, okay, I like this better. and makes a really good case for it. Like, I think Shannon's right. If he was playing some super arch twirling your mustache villain, it wouldn't have played, but he unlocks Steven and he's like, okay, I get it now. I understand what's going on and this must be really hard for you. So let me explain some things to you, and kind of walks him and the audience through it. And he was like, so I used to be Khonshu's avatar and now it is Marc, who we don't really know. I'd love to have a conversation with him sometime. And he's so like, he's so just calm and polite. Yeah. And he's like, you know what? You should really try the lentil soup because I know you're vegan. And you're like, this is a bad guy? It's like this is what the conservative right is afraid of. A guy with long hair who makes lentil soup. Like, you know, he's like walking him around. He's having this lovely casual conversation. And I love the contrast of him being this super calm, relaxed guy and Khonshu getting so pissed off and kind of like up on the rooftops and looking down and like making things blow wind and everything. And he's like, oh yeah, he can't do anything. Like without an avatar, he's like, this is why they need avatars. Like this is why they need us. And kind of walking through what his goal is, what he's trying to do. And even though he doesn't have a conversation with Marc, he does sort of talk to Marc peripherally. Like he says to Steven, I would like you to tell Marc, and we kind of see Marc's reaction in the plate, which I thought was really, really cool. So he's playing this super calm thing and kind of makes a lot of sense until Steven points out, as John says, the Hitler baby thing, which is the Minority Report, which is like, it all sounds great, except for the fact that you're killing innocent people for what they might do.
Right. That they haven't.
And that's a problem. And again, I love that as meek and sort of out of his element as Steven is, we have these moments where in his, as Kalinowski says, Peter Griffin doing Hugh Grant way, he kind of like is like, oh, excuse me, but we gonna kill babies? Feels like a bad idea to me. And so I thought the whole thing was really interesting. And then just seeing him, even when he like reaches a level of I'm gonna like put my foot down and do the thing, he seems almost like, okay, I guess. Like he's like the most hippie villain we've ever had, and it's really, really interesting to play. On the purple magic thing, I do want to point out, because you keep bringing up like Agatha Harkness, but to me, the bigger connection here is all of the powers of the Black Panther, which is purple. Yeah, because at the beginning of Black Panther, they're very clear on Bast being the one who brought them the purple, the herb of the Black Panther, and Bast is an Egyptian goddess. And so the fact that Bast is kind of the reason that the Wakandans have the herb that gives them the powers of the Black Panther, and all of their magic is purple, and the Egyptian magic is purple. And even when you look on the Marvel wiki, because I was looking it up just to make sure, they even say that Bast in the comics is tied to Khonshu. Like that there's a connection there. So I do think there's this kind of, I don't know where the MCU is going with everything. And I know we talked last week about, are we going into full gods, or are we saying that the Egyptian, you know, all the gods of Egypt are also aliens, or what are we doing? But I do think that there is some kind of connection there. You know, and Marvel hasn't come out and told us what all the colors of their magic and their powers mean, but there's a lot of conversation to be had around it. So I'm curious as to what if anything there is there. Yeah.
Kalinowski, did Ethan Hawke do enough to win you over here with his portrayal of Harrow, or if the writers kind of constructed this villain in a way that appeals to you, or do you think it's too broad still, it's too general to make a decision?
The more you guys talk, the more I'm befuddled. I don't know. I don't know. We bring up so much of the Thanos stuff, but I'm like,
that's also purple.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, again, here's another villain that we're trying to side with, and like, well, he makes a good point, but this and that. I'm also confused going back to last episode now with this episode. He was in Bavaria in a castle with guys with guns, and he meets Marc or Steven in a Bavarian town, but now he's got a commune in England. Have we established that? Does he just show up in different parts of Europe and he's got followers? Like, I don't understand that.
And Europe's all very close. You know?
What's going? Like, are we just kind of skimming over this? Or are we not addressing the fact that this guy had a castle in Bavaria? last episode, and now he's got a commune with lentil soup in England.
Well, even
What's
when
going
he goes
on?
to the, but even at the end
Well,
of the
what's
first
going
episode,
on with the lentil soup in the castle? What is this?
What? But even at the end of the last episode, when he goes to the British Museum, I mean, he's sort of surrounded by people that have the mark. So I don't think they all came with him from Bavaria.
Okay, that's the thing. Then
He's a global cult leader.
Communes everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, on board. Smart. I just need a little more clarification on that. But
That's fair.
maybe I need Harrow for dummies here for myself.
I think it was the lentil soup that threw you off.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't like lentil soup. So I'm like, I'm out. Befuddled Englishman eating lentil soup. I'm out.
Yeah.
The magic brings up a good point. I don't know if, because I always thought the vibranium, when it hit the asteroid, that enriched the soil and that created the purple herb. But I guess it was Bass that granted it.
Well, no, it did. I mean, they do.
Yeah.
If you watch the opening, I mean, I'm not saying that the asteroid didn't hit, because it did, and it did infuse the soil. That's kind of where vibranium came from. But they very clearly name drop Bast.
Right.
In their mythology, and given that she is an Egyptian god, and their magic is purple, and Amit's magic that Harrow is using is purple. I mean, look, Agatha Harkness's magic is purple as well. So the Power Stone is purple. So there's a lot of ways that you could slice it. But I do think that if you're going to start saying, well, okay, now we've got Khonshu and Amit, and there's all the other Egyptian gods that we could name drop in Moon Knight, and Bast is over here in Wakanda, there does seem to be at least broadly a connection that you could draw.
Yeah, and you're seeing the parallels here to Doctor Strange, aren't you? Caecilius being the former kind of protege of the Ancient One, and him kind of finding the disillusion of that situation, and her moving on to Stephen Strange, and then also Mordo by the end being disillusioned by the Ancient One himself and moving away from this ideology. And we're seeing here where Harrow had been an avatar for Khonshu and then had reached some kind of point, some kind of breaking point. I wonder if we're going to get a scene between Khonshu and Harrow where they kind of talk this out as a former son and father type thing, or mentor mentee, and explains like why he broke off from this, because obviously this is not in the comics, and so it'd be
great to see that if he's the reason he's physically broken as well. You know, he's walking with the cane. Like he wouldn't have chosen a man that was, less like he wanted Mark.
Yeah,
a physically fit mercenary guy. So maybe Harrow, there's some history there with he left him a broken man.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
so
that and he puts broken glass in his flip-flops.
That's true.
But that could be another reason why he carries a cane.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, but I like what we're doing here. I like what we're exploring here with Harrow. I want to see, as cool and as passionless as he is, I do want to see some moment of explosion or some kind of moment of emotion here. Because a villain rattled is more interesting than a villain who's just calmly passing through the episodes, doing his thing by the end. So I hope there's more to rattle him at some point. Certainly Steven makes him stop for a second, and you can see the eyes start to flare a little bit when he asks him the question. And by the way, he's asking this question as this entire cult and commune that is supposedly so great to be a part of stands up to essentially intimidate Steven to give the scarab to Harrow. And then Steven puts him on the spot about this whole thing with the Hitler baby.
Yes, they didn't like the lentil soup either.
Yeah. Well, who does? I don't, I had it once, never the F again. But yeah, so just fascinating stuff to work on. All right, before we wrap up, let's talk about the storyline overall as it's the overall storyline as it's progressing through this episode. Mike, I'll go back to you here as a showrunner and who's in charge of overall storylines and make sure you hit certain spots. Do you like the way they're setting up the mystery of this, right? With Steven discovering the key and the phone again, going into that storage locker, having the conversation with Mark there, seeing the cot, seeing the passport, seeing the gun, freaking out at Khonshu, running out, having the conversation with Layla, and then boom, being taken by these corrupt detectives to this conversation with Harrow. And then by the end, ending up in Egypt. Do you like the way they set this whole storyline up for this episode as we're leading into out of the first episode into the third and fourth episodes as well?
Personally, I do. I think they're giving us just enough information that we keep feeling like we're learning more.
Yeah.
But like we don't feel lost. Like the scarab, aka the Egyptian golden snitch, is like
Yeah.
is like it's a great device because we're very clear on what everybody wants. Like Harrow wants to take the snitch so that it will lead him to Amit's resting place so that Amit can come back and wipe out all the bad people from the planet. Cool, like we got it. And Khonshu and Marc want to prevent that from happening. And Layla has opinions on the Scarab, and Steven is along for the ride and is like, I don't know what's happening. So even though we have a lot of questions about what the fuck is going on with Marc and Steven and the personalities, from a very broad standpoint, we are very clear on what we're going. Like, we know why we're in Egypt, we know what's going on, and that's really great because it's good to just have that goal so that you as an audience member are not lost. Like, we know what we're moving towards. But at the same time, when it comes to Marc and Steven and Khonshu, there's so much that we don't know. Like, we did get the information in the cop car from the cops that were working for Harrow that Marc, had shot a bunch of people. And Marc is like, that's not what you think it is, Steven. And Steven's like, you're a murderer. And so we don't know a lot. We know that Khonshu is using Marc. What is did Khonshu break Marc? Does Khonshu want Marc to be broken so that does Khonshu have his own goals with Marc? Right. Does Khonshu just want to use Marc and so he can get to Layla? Like, Khonshu's goals in here are very open to interpretation, and there's a lot that we can build on. And how many personalities Marc does have, what Marc is going on, what does Layla fully know about Marc, what is she going to learn about Marc? So from an emotional character standpoint, there's still so much interesting stuff to play with as we're kind of going to this ultimate finale of, are we going to bring Amit back or not? So I think that's all really interesting to me. And like I said earlier on, just this dynamic of Steven and Marc battling over the body. I mean, like that Marc is like, look, I'm in control and you're like a offshoot personality. And Steven's like, fuck you. Like, I've got a life. Like, you're not the boss of this body. Like, I have equal rights here. And that debate and how that lands out is going to be really interesting. And I mean, as you guys said, with like the whole, is it Jake Lockley? Is that the other personality? Yeah. Like, I just love the idea that you have these two characters that are arguing about who has control of the personality. And like you said, there's going to be some shattered mirror where all of a sudden some third guy is going to be like, well, let me tell you what, I'm the one that asked her out on a date and I just, you're going to be like, what's going on? So I think there's a lot of fun to be had with it. And I'm really curious to see how far they can go with it.
Yeah. Kalinowski, thoughts on how they're, I mean, if you remove your distaste, if for lack of a better term, of Stephen Grant, do you like the way the showrunners are and the writers are constructing the mystery of Moon Knight as we go into the first two episodes here, going into the third?
It's why I love listening to you guys, not just being a guest here, because the perspectives you guys put on, it's like, okay, I'm seeing things that I'm missing out on when I watch it as a viewer, not just as a person that loves Moon Knight, but as a person that is not enjoying this version of it. So I'm like, okay, you guys make some great points. I got to look at that and think about that. Like, I do think, and this debate is, we've had it for every series that they've done so far. I think, like, when you look at the Disney Plus Star Wars stuff, Mando 1 and 2 and Book of Boba, those should have been weekly. Absolutely. Some Marvels, I think if this was all 6 released at once, I'd be enjoying it probably a lot more.
It's a great point.
Whereas, what if WandaVision weekly was awesome, so everyone is different. Like, I got to take it as they come. Like, this would have been one, drop all 6 at once. So I again, I'm not going to finish the show, and I fully reserve the right to say, wow, I was wrong. This show is phenomenal in 4 weeks from now.
Yeah. So you're saying because
the structure is great. Like, again, it's taking I love the fact that they didn't stick. I guess I should say this. My view of Marc would have been a traditional superhero story, with the kind of Batman-ish protagonist and his personalities, where all the personalities are kind of still cool, and you all liked every personality he went to. Like, I think that's a kind of a cool thing. Like, I really like what I've seen in Marc Spector. I don't like Stephen Grant, but I like Marc. Whereas in the comics, I liked all of his personalities. So this is kind of cool. Like, and now thinking, hopefully we'll see Jake or some version of him. Yeah. And we'll see what that is. So I love the fact that Marvel said, go do something different. And they're letting them do something. People can always complain Marvel's of a same ilk all the time, but this clearly shows that they're not. And the construct in which they are telling this story, I do enjoy.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a great points you bring up, Kalinowski, for sure. Shannon, thoughts on how the construction of this is going? Do you like how they've built this mystery out, and that we're seeing this kind of dual personality or dissociative identity disorder coming out in a certain way here as we're navigating the big points, plot points within this second episode going into the third.
Yeah, I do. I think the writers are doing a really terrific job of setting the board for what we're eventually going to get to. Writing wise, I have no issues with the show. I mean, I think the first episode, the way they sort of dropped you in the middle of it with zero context, I think that that was by design. And as a viewer, for someone who doesn't really know the character, it was not overly satisfying. But I agree with Kalinowski. Like if this were a scenario where you could get boom, 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 you could knock them all out, and you didn't have to wait week to week. I think at the end of that run, the challenges that I found with the first episode probably wouldn't have been there because stuff's getting addressed very, very quickly. Yeah. For me, the speed bump with the show is just the directors right now. I think they're kind of kneecapping the show for me. Now, a lot of people have said this is their favorite Disney Plus series thus far. So I might be on an island here about this. What
are we going to name it? What are we going to name it? We've got Hayward Island. What is this one going to be called?
I don't know. Director Island. What is? We'll come up with something.
Charmingly Befuddled Island.
Well, that's not the island I'm on. That's the island you're on.
Yeah.
But
Kalinowski's over on Befuddled Bay.
How did I get here?
What am I doing here? I'm terribly confused.
But for me, I mean, I think the writing, everything is being laid out in a great way. And even though I get Kalinowski's issue with the Stephen Grant character, for an uninitiated audience, I think this was probably a very smart way to do it, because if you start with your primary, if you start with your hero, for an audience, it's not, and then you have to introduce this befuddled Englishman, it probably is not as satisfying, it would not be as satisfying a journey. And I know we're wrapping up, but can we talk about our first big appearance of Moon Knight?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, so the Mr. Knight thing, Kalinowski had told me that this is a very different version than what is in the comics. I thought this made perfect sense, that this is the suit that Stephen Grant would conjure. Right. I thought it was great. I thought the Mr. Knight sequence should have been narrowed a little bit. It should have been cut down a little bit, because again, I feel like you run into a directorial mistake where after he gets thrown. He gets. I know. I'm not.
I want to apologize to Mohammed Diab, who might be watching this review. I apologize for my.
He didn't do the first one. It was Moorhead and the other guy. It was the director team.
Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. I apologize. Yeah, go ahead.
But the moment where the invisible jackal, that's another thing that I'm like, okay, only certain people can see these sort of Egyptian conjurings. Like Harrow can't see Khonshu, and the rest, no one else can see the jackals. But the moment that Steven's still in the Mr. Knight getup, but the mask is off, and Marc says, "I can save us. Look at what's happening." Yeah. And we get a brief glimpse of the jackal surrounded by some people, and it's like, what is happening? Like, we don't really know. You didn't show us. It was really, really quick. But then we finally get to see Moon Knight in all of his, cloaked glory, and the solution is to get the jackal to chase him. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I get it. He probably should have punched the jackal or something, like, rather than just being like, "Hey, how you doing? Follow me." The actual chase, getting to see him sort of, anyone in a cape jumping rooftop to rooftop, that's awesome. That's a blast to see. A little confused about the crescent moon blades or whatever they are, because it looked like he took two of them off, but it was still on there. So it was like, are there three? Maybe. But the effects of watching Oscar Isaac leap everywhere with that, that cloak kind of billowing in the wind, that was awesome. Like, that was so much fun. And I'm with Kalinowski. Like, that's why I wanted more of Moon Knight at the end of the first episode. I'm like, let us see this fight a little bit more. Like, I get what you're doing. And I think if you dropped all 6, this would have worked. But seeing as how we're not going to get a taste for another week, give us a little bit more. Watching him just, grab the jackal, put him on the spire. I mean, that was awesome, and I'm so glad that we finally got some good superhero action in our superhero show.
Yeah, I mean, Feige said this is a brutal show. I have yet to see the brutality, but maybe I'm desensitized from seeing much more brutality in other films. Maybe it's brutal for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's not necessarily brutal as you would overall think of it, for sure. Because the killing of the Jackal certainly was a powerful moment, but it isn't like necessarily that brutal. And even Harrow killing the old lady and killing the homeless guy, giving the scarab, doesn't feel that brutal because, as Shannon pointed out, we're watching it from a distance. The homeless guy, we're watching it from Layla's perspective, and then the other one we're watching from Steven's perspective. So there's a little bit of distance here. We're not sensing the brutality just yet, and I wonder if that will be coming overall. And just to throw my 2 cents in, I like the way this is being constructed. I like that the mystery is there, especially as a Moon Knight fan. I'm like, okay, I can create space to see what you're going to do with this, and reserve my judgment until we get to episode 6 and the end of episode 6 and see if you took the circuitous route to get to the end result that all of us wanted anyway, who were fans of the character. So that's fine. You had fun with it, because there are some crazy runs of Moon Knight that do some really insane shit and mess with the mythology, mess with the canon. So this isn't out of the realm of possibility of other runs. As Mike said earlier, Kalinowski said earlier, there's no definitive run of Moon Knight, and Mike and Vogel referenced that. There's no definitive run of it. So they've taken their liberties with this character on multiple occasions, so why not here? Let's have fun with it. If at the end Moon Knight is firmly established and we understand what this character is and the motivations of this character, then I'm fine with it, to be honest with you. So,
John, that's a great point.
Yeah,
I just wanted to do, if at the end of this we are left with a Marc Spector or Stephen Grant that's still befuddled and whatnot, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that.
Right.
Like, I would like by the end of this him to be clearly defined. These are the parameters of who I am, what I do.
Yeah.
Into the MCU I go.
And I have all my personalities, and I know how to use them and when to reference them, when to call on them, what have you. Yeah.
Yep. We'll see.
Can I ask a question? I'm actually, because I actually have no, like, so what is Mr. Knight in the comics?
He's a detective.
But I mean, like, is Mr. So, like, you guys were saying, like, Moon Knight is basically like Marc Spector in his costume and kicking ass and taking names. Is Mr. Knight also Marc Spector, but he's calmer, or what is Mr. Knight in the comics?
Yeah. Kalinowski, go ahead.
Yeah, no, John, you're just saying, like, and again, that's why once he came into the character, like, that was a choice made in the comics that I was like, oh, this is going to stick for a while. And I was like, I kind of tuned out after that. I didn't like the character. I was like, I like the cloak. I like that whole aspect of it. So he was a badass. I mean, but there's one of the best issues I ever read. It was kind of like a take on the Raid, where it was Mr. Knight going into this tenant building, and you saw the comic panels can do wonderful designs with him going through every floor, just being a badass. So it was great. I just didn't like the concept of a suit with a mask.
He's basically just like a different costume,
a different take
look
on Moon Knight.
for Moon
Yeah,
Knight.
But he's more ground-based.
More grounded. Yeah.
He's a detective. He's much less action, much less fighting. He's more, even though we've got the Raid one that he referenced, but it's much less. He's much less prone to violence. He's more about scaring the shit out of people. And like the idea, like there's a panel there where he says, well, they can see you coming because you're wearing a white suit. And he's like, exactly. I want them to see me coming. I want to scare the shit out of them. And that's the kind of concept that Mr. Knight has. He's more about the investigation, the detective aspect of it, which is, of course, the Batman stuff. They make the comparisons all the time. That aspect of it is Mr. Knight. So they leaned into that a little bit more and less about the cloak and the showy and all that kind of violence that Moon Knight likes to do in its pure form.
And then in the comics, when Steven or Jake is in control, can they become Moon Knight, or is Marc really the only one who does Moon Knight? Like, is that...
Jake,
they kind of got rid of Jake a little while ago. Like, he's still there. And again, like, they can, with paneling and stuff, you do so much more with personalities. Again, that's why Bendis did the whole thing where they got rid of that, and it was Spider-Man, Cap, and Wolverine, because those are 3 distinct personalities. And I think that's why they kind of, for a while, got away from it. It's like Jake and Marc and Steven were kind of similar for so long in the comics. Like, we got to do something different. And that's where the Mr. Knight stuff card started coming up, and it's just like it was much more. I don't remember Jake being around. Yeah, and
the reason
Marc
I
once
asked,
Mr. Knight popped up.
They can become both at any time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The reason I ask is because, kind of to Shannon's point, like what they did with Mr. Knight in the series, as someone who doesn't really know, made 100% sense to me. Like, I was like, and I do think if what they're doing, which I think they will, which I don't think Kalinowski will like, is that Steven and Marc are gonna, like, they've both got money in this timeshare that is this body. Like, they are both putting money into this timeshare, and they both are laying claim to that. And I do think that we're going to find in the arc of the series that Steven has information and knowledge about Egypt that Marc doesn't have.
Great point.
And that perhaps Steven, as Mr. Knight, has abilities and skills that Marc, as Moon Knight, does not have. And I do think that we are going to see these two characters, that Steven is going to rise up as an equal partner to Marc in the series and in the MCU in a way that he might not be in the comics. That's my guess, just given what they've done so far.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm saying. Like, by the end, because Moon Knight in the comics is aware of his personalities, knows when to reference them, knows when to use them. If by the end we've got that, what you pointed out here, Mike, a change in the approach, and that Mr. Knight is Steven's alter ego, and Marc or Steven calls upon that to show up. Boom, that's the path we're walking. They're going to be more aware of each other and when to use, what to use, and they understand and appreciate each other's strengths and weaknesses depending on the situation, which makes him even more formidable. He's not of one mind, he's of three minds, and confronting three minds at the same time can be quite dangerous for anybody. So I think what they're setting up is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe if they get it right.
Dangerous and funny as fuck, because what I'm picturing now in my head, let's just say they bring in a Jake personality as well. I don't know if they will or not, but what I'm assuming is that in 4 years from now or whatever, we have a scene in a Marvel movie where it's Scarlet Witch, Doctor Strange, and Wong talking to Moon Knight, and Steven, Marc, and Jake are literally all arguing at the same time about what to do, and the other three are just staring and watching Oscar Isaac just pop into different accents and personalities as he's arguing, and they're all like, this motherfucker's crazy. And I think that'll work really well. Like, if that's the direction they're going, I think that could be really something kind of awesome.
Why not? We're about to get, 3 Doctor Stranges in Multiverse of Madness, if not more. We've certainly got 2 Wandas. So why wouldn't the possibility exist of multiple people having
you don't necessarily have 2 Wandas? You don't know what's happening in that scene. It could be in her head. You don't know. We'll see.
It's like they're talking to each other. I'm just saying. Anyway, all right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for joining us for the spoiler review of episode 2 of Moon Knight here. We appreciate it madly. Thanks for all the comments you guys left on our episode 1 spoiler review. Keep them coming as we talk about all this stuff here on the Geek Buddies show. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MK2, and if you would like to follow Mr. Roca, it is @The Roca Says.
Thank you, Mike.
Are you enjoying Moon Knight like Roca? Are you super into it like me? Are you kind of disappointed in it like Kalinowski? Or do you just hate directors like Shannon? No matter what your opinion is, you have someone here you can follow. And if you want to keep listening, here is what we need you to do. You can hit that like button below. Let us know that you enjoyed listening to what we had to say. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out all the amazing content that he's got going on. Leave your comments below. What did you think of the episode? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Are you a Moon Knight fan of the comics? Is this matching up to your expectations? Do you know nothing about Moon Knight? And are you digging where it's going? Let us know what you think below. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere that podcasts are available, take a second to leave us some stars, leave us some comments. It helps us go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it to your socials, send it to your friends, and tell everybody to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
Well said. And once again, we want to thank the great Mike Kalinowski for joining us.
Pleasure
here.
as always, gentlemen.
It's always great to see you, brother. Please plug everything you got, including your book.
Yeah, my book, myself and Brad Gilmore, James Bond, the complete history of him, available now, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Target. I'm working on something. A lot of people reached out to me about how they can get signed copies. I'm working on that now to make it kind of feasible and a good deal to get it shipped out to you. So I've got some little logistics.
How can I get a signed copy?
You got a special one just for you, buddy boy.
Oh boy.
And check me out on Twitter @Mike Kalinowski.
We were so close.
I didn't go there. That's quiet
I just
today.
asked how to get a signed copy. What's wrong with that?
I know.
Oh,
You do have to drive to the valley, though.
That's true. You go to the valley for breadsticks, but not for your best friends. I saw that tweet.
Whoa, breadsticks. What
Fucking
breadsticks in the valley
breadsticks.
for? Olive Garden breadsticks?
Someone was talking about Olive Garden. He's just like, the amount of times I've gone to that Olive Garden at the Empire Center for breadsticks. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So you'll go to the valley for breadsticks, not for your friends. I see how it is. For breadsticks.
I remember
The Stofers with carpet you're going to go to. Stofers with carpet, the Olive Garden. Jesus.
Well, we lost them as a sponsor. All right. We appreciate
When you're
it.
here, you're family, except if your last name's Kalinowski.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here for the spoiler review episode here of Moon Knight. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode or spoiler review here. Oh, no, wait. I got to say one last thing. Thank you to Carbon Health, who powers and sponsors here on the Geek Buddies. I'd be remiss not to mention them. They've got 100-plus locations across 14 states, 50-plus locations across California, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Sacramento, North San Diego, where I'm at. Most locations have COVID testing, and they've done over 2 million COVID tests. So they know what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're in California, consider getting an annual checkup. I know. You don't want to go get a checkup. You're annoyed. You don't want to do it. Get it done, because you've got a great a bunch of people there over at Carbon Health who want to take care of you. You've got physicians who want to stay connected with you, keep up with you, make sure you're doing everything you need to do to keep yourself healthy. We want you around being fans of the Geek Buddies for a long time. So please consider going to carbonhealth.com. And they partner with us because they care about positive communities like the Geek Buddies community who engage with each other over the love of culture and expressions of life. Mike, you want to
take it from me, guys? Take it from me. If you eat too many breadsticks at Olive Garden, you want a dock in your pock. I'm just telling you. It's important. It's important to have help at the ready if you just go to town on those breadsticks.
Or it looks like you got a dock in your pocket from all those breadsticks. All right. Y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. We'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey!